Joining us now to review some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Arise News analyst Emmanuel Efeni. Great Malabite, action.
Good morning, Ruben.
Morning.
Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Rufai.
Morning, sir.
Yes, we'll start the review with These Days, Nigeria's newspaper of record. Yes, we'll start with the story just below the masthead. Atiku Abbas, Obaseki, Sanwo-Olu, Abiodun, ICANN, others mourn Akintola Williams. Say is end of an era for accounting profession in Nigeria as pioneer chartered accountant dies at 104 years. Yes, Pa Akintola Williams, the dawn of the accounting profession in Nigeria. Philanthropist and, of course, music promoter, because the idea of the Mozon Center was one of his brainchild, and he and others with great interest in music put up that edifice that has been a tribute to music, the training of musicians, and of course, drama and the arts in general, an art and culture center, the Mozon Center. But Pa Akintola, the first chartered accountant, pioneer member of course, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, blessed with longevity. He was around for so long. At a time, it was like he was not going to leave us in planet Earth. But today, the entire country mourn the passing away of Akintola Williams, almost synonymous with accountancy in this climb. And of course, globally, his firm, Akintola Williams, firm of chartered accountants, also one of the top accounting firms in the country. We miss him, we mourn him, and of course, the rest of the accounting family, yes, as we mourn with them, they will just have to hold the flag high, the standards high of the accounting profession. But we'll look at the lead story. After meeting with Tinubu, UAE lifts visa ban on Nigerians. Emirates, Etihad Airlines to resume flights in, out of Nigeria. UAE to invest several $billion in defense, agriculture sectors in Nigeria. New forex liquidity program between both countries to be unfolded in coming weeks. Emirates news agency mom on lifting of visa ban, flight resumption. Yes, I said it yesterday on this program that the whistle stop over that diplomatic shuttle of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu on his way from the G20 meeting to the UAE. If you can get some of this ban upturned, flight resumption, then he will be bringing something concrete from his trip. Is economic diplomacy. The number one diplomat of the country, the president of the country himself, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, was in UAE. He spoke with the authorities there, and things have changed. And the benefits on both sides. Of course, Etihad and Emirates, they will resume their flights almost immediately. But there is the other end of the BASA agreement. And I'm sure the Nigerian airlines will also be looking forward to what is the need for the national airlines of Nigeria, who also have the capacity to move passengers between both countries. And in the days ahead, I'm sure the goodies, not only for UAE, Etihad and Emirates Airlines, but also for Nigerian airlines, will be unfolded in the fullness of time. And we look at other newspapers, how they are reporting this story. The Daily Sun newspaper, UAE lifts visa ban on Nigerian travelers. Decision taken after parley with Tinubu. Now, the Daily Trust newspaper reporting this story. Flights, businesses resume as Nigeria, UAE resolve row. Experts want Nigerian airlines. Of course, Nigerian airlines have to be part of the mix. That is when we'll be talking of the real benefit of these agreements. Now, the leadership newspaper, Nigeria UAE deal, experts predict rise in foreign investment revenue boosts. But there's a story just above that story in the leadership newspaper. Uzodinma reports Abbas to Tinubu for giving Ugo Chinyere juicy committee. Well, that's what the leadership newspaper is reporting. Of course, there's no love lost between Ikenga Ugo Chinyere, the member representing one of the constituencies in Imo State, and of course, the governor of Imo State, Hope Uzodinma. Their differences is well publicized, and their, I don't want to say mutual hate is also well publicized. And I'm sure the people of Imo State will be wondering what is in it between Hope Uzodinma, the governor, and Ikenga Ugo Chinyere, because all the evils and ills that befall Ikenga Ugo Chinyere, he attributes to the governor. He attributes to the governor wherever he has the opportunity to do so. But let's just move on to other stories. The Guardian newspaper, cautious optimism as federal government adopts piecemeal negotiation out of $800 million stock funds. Of course, the airlines, foreign airlines that have their monies trapped in Nigeria, and how they can get their monies out has been a nagging problem in the face of scarcity of foreign exchange. Now, the Business Day newspaper, U.S. visa deniers squeeze Nigerian students. Yes, Nigerian students hit 30-year high in 2022. The U.S. Embassy is saying, of course, a number of Nigerian students have seen their plans to study in the United States frustrated as their application for F1 visas were denied. Business Day findings reveal. Now, the visa deniers have left some of these students in a funk as they also lamented the financial losses caused by this development. Of course, those who want to study in the U.S. perhaps have to rethink and look elsewhere, as the U.S. Embassy also thinking that too many Nigerians are applying for the F1 visa to study in the United States. Now, the New Telegraph newspaper, I saw this coming. PEPT judgment, Presidential Election Petition Tribunal judgment. Abuja indigenes set to demand for governor, 3 senators, reps, state of assembly to approach court over verdict which confers state status on the FCT. Senior advocates of Nigeria back suit. Of course, the fallout of that judgment that literally pronounced Abuja, the FCT, as the 37th state of Nigeria. Well, we'll see how, of course, the Supreme Court will still wade into this matter before the people of Abuja can say hooray and start fighting for state status, 3 senators, governors, and all the perks that goes with the status of a state. Now, the Nation newspaper, mixed fortunes for APC, Labour, PDP, Labour at tribunals. Of course, the tribunals are giving their verdict, the various tribunals across the country. And of course, it's a matter of you win some, you lose some for the various political parties, APC, PDP, and Labour. You win some, you lose some. But there's still avenue to go on appeal for those who have lost at the tribunal. Now, the Nigerian Tribune newspaper, federal government to increase education funding by 25%. Minister, target 4 years to end out of school children syndrome. Yes, the Minister of Education is talking, and of course, coming from a private sector background, where he was the Vice Chancellor of Bayes University before his appointment. Yes, he will bring something new to the table. And is predicting that there will be an increase by 25% of government funding for education. When the federal government does that, the states must also follow suit for it to be meaningful, that there is indeed increase in the funding of education across the country. Now, the Blueprint newspaper, Nigeria needs 21 trillion naira to fix 28 million housing deficit. Shetima, that's the vice president himself, saying that Sokoto plans 7.3 billion naira, 500 units for civil servants. Federal government to review nation housing needs. Minister. Now, the independent newspaper, the Daily Independent newspaper, masses won't eat good policies, intentions. NASU tells Tinubu, NASU, the non-academic staff union, of course, putting what everybody knows in a dramatic way. People are hungry. Pandemic of the empty pocket. Loss of the value of the naira in your pocket or even in your account. Of course, inflation, devaluation of the naira, and people are hungry. But the government of the day, the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has good intentions, has good policies. Non-academic staff union saying, nah, policy and good intentions we go chop to use Nigerian palace. Of course, the government has to address what is the problem in the land. Now, the foreign newspapers quickly. The Daily Telegraph of UK. Britain cannot afford to cut ties with China despite spying row. Of course, reliance on Beijing to reach net zero means we must continue to engage, suggests Sunak and Badenoch. Yes, this spying row in, of course, China being accused of having spies within the UK, especially in government agencies. But that is being denied if we looked at the Daily Independent newspaper, because the spy in the Common twist, House of Common, somebody who is a researcher there is being accused. But he's saying, I am not a Chinese spy, says researcher linked to top MPs. Parliamentary aid comes out fighting. As it emerges, he had access to sensitive documents about threats to MPs from hostile states. Now, the Guardian newspaper, the Guardian of UK, NHS, alarm over exodus of medical students. 1/3 of the young medics plan to quit NHS within 2 years of graduating. That's in the UK. Maybe this will be music to ears of some doctors outside UK. If they quit, we'll come. We earn good money. We abandon our countries. Of course, Nigerian doctors are known to be taking flight to UK and other places, including Sierra Leone, Gambia. They are now attracting our doctors because they pay better than Nigeria, well, the giant of Africa. Now, let's look at the Times of London. 1 in 3 female surgeons assaulted by a colleague. 11 reports being raped in landmark survey. Not a good one for those surgeons who behave in a depraved manner and rape their colleagues. Now, the Washington Post newspaper, updated COVID vaccine on way. Of course, the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration in the US, has approved this new shot. The Center for Disease Control will soon give its own approval. The new dose should arrive before the season illness. So, updated version of the COVID vaccine. The researchers not sleeping and wanting to do more for humanity. And of course, the pharmaceutical company will also make their money. Ruben, Rufai, and Ayo.
I mean, what else can we really say? A lot of stories, but one that really caught my eye is the fact that finally we've decided that we'll be increasing funding for education, which is a very good one. The fact that we have never really met education funding quotas as regards, international educational body, UNESCO threshold and the likes and things like that. So now that we're finally going to increase that. And there's another story making the rounds as regards the new curriculum coming out for our universities, the level of input, because I think that needs to be looked at. Most of the things we teach in our universities are still moribund till date. Looking at that and seeing how we can, improve on our curriculum will make a great deal of sense. And for those that want to take this judgment to court, probably if they can wait for the Supreme
For
Court,
the Supreme Court
to sound off on it first, and anything the Supreme Court, if they still maintain what the Court of Appeal was saying as regards State of Abuja, then they can go ahead and push, for the interpretation and say they want a governor and all of that, for their states. And pretty much the story dominating and making the rounds is, once again, the death of the Doyen himself, the man that most accountants in Nigeria, will praise for his great work and his love and passion for humanity, what he did while he was alive. And his life is an example to a lot of people. Dr. Abati was saying the other time that they don't make men like this any longer. It's not that they don't make men like this any longer. It's just that people are not ready to be patient enough to go through the rigors and to understand the true essence of life. And that's why they make mistakes, Young people are not patient enough to be able to say, okay, my life is about legacies, not about how much cars or houses I own, but it's about the impact in the life of other people. And that's what he did. He didn't just limit himself to accountancy. He did a lot of work for our country. He did a lot of work as regards art. He did a lot of work as regards conservation. Today, climate change is a buzzword, but the likes of Akintola Williams were already talking about climate change and conservation many years ago. Look at the Lekki Conservation Area. That's the only place that still protects the natural
environment of the Lekki Peninsula.
Area.
Yes.
That area used to be called Igboefon for a reason. And most of the flora and fauna content, they had been depleted with this urban jungle we have today. There's a popular person, I think it was Joni Mitchell, that's saying you remove paradise and put up a parking lot. Concrete jungle we live in today. But the preservation of that area has done a lot for the people, and this is what he stood for. And I think a lot of people should be able to learn from him and learn from his exemplary life. And when his family finally, releases the burial schedule, definitely I'm sure everybody in the media would like to rally around and pay him a befitting tribute, because he did indeed leave. And he did came and he saw and he conquered. And, staying power is also important. That's what a lot of people should learn. So what we should be taking are lessons from his life. And all the politicians that are, saying their condolences and making glowing tribute, they too should emulate the life of Akintola Williams. He lived a selfless life for every other person out there.
Absolutely. Just to go on to the increase in education funding by up to 25% announced by the Minister of Education, Professor Taha Maman. And just to talk about the source of this funding. So usually the conversation around where funding comes from for education, in the past government, it's been said we don't have money. And even in this administration, revenue is a challenge. But one of the key things that I'd like to highlight is the allowing of, or just for educational institutions to be creative in seeking funding for themselves, not just fully dependent on the government.
Generating their own revenue
and being creative about
it. I hope that will not be at the expense of students who have to pay
more.
That's
something else to look at, because that's part of what they mentioned. So there are other,
of course, fees. This government wants to introduce
funds, fees, alumni, tapping into alumni associations and things like that.
Like Unical is doing.
Yes, like Unical is doing.
It has to be Unical.
It has to be said, because tertiary institutions and institutions across board
we're doing it with some panache
to generate revenue. In other parts of the world, that's the practice. The unfortunate thing, like you mentioned, is that we must also ensure that it doesn't impact on the quality of education or preventing people who are from low-income families from accessing education because of the cost of education to the people. And then in terms of the UK and medical students, over 10,000 medical students were polled to get their opinion, and they cited reasons like unfavorable working conditions, pay, and we've seen that play out. We've had resident doctors been on strike for a few months, still trying to negotiate in terms of wages, and to imagine that this is happening in the United Kingdom with the NHS is quite, it's quite eye-opening. So where would Nigerian doctors go? And I was wondering whether they're migrating to someone said
Nigerian doctors are not complaining of the conditions.
But you know the difference. The government will have to act based on this particular poll, and they'll begin to put in policies to ensure they don't lose their best brains.
Okay. The promise, because it's at the level of the promise, that 25% funding will be provided for education. It is something that is up there in the sky, in the air. It is when we see it that we'll believe it. But definitely, a lot more needs to be done for education. In this country, we've seen how education revolutionized this country at a time. In 1955, when in the Western region, the Action Group introduced free universal education. You saw how that catalyzed education. By 1957, the East had followed suit, also focusing on education. The North followed in 1959. Okay, so you see that at a point in this country, the regions took education seriously. The values changed, things went all right, the military took over, defense began to get more funding. But we need to return to the basics about funding education. So it's still at the level of aspiration. That's why I say when we see it, we'll believe it. However, more important, it's not just about providing education, producing people with big certificates. It's also working out that school to work transition, which is where the missing link is here. Because we're not producing, people go to universities, they go to colleges, there's no market for their skills. So that absorptive capacity is also something that we need to talk about. Not just about headlines. We will provide 25% funding, and also the quality of the education that is provided. Not teachers selling handouts, or at the lower levels, teachers selling pop-up and chin-chin to students. You know, so it's a whole value reorientation that is required within the education sector. But this is good. We have the conversation. You talked about UK, the fear of spying and all that.
Yes.
Well, the background to it was that in April, 2 persons were, reportedly arrested working in Parliament at the heart of Westminster. They said they were researchers. One of them has said he's innocent. He doesn't know anything about it. But the fear of China, underscores this conflict with China, whether it's about technology or your basic phone that you use. But coming back a notch, the business secretary is right to say that, well, we can't stop all Chinese products. We just have to minimize risk and continue to engage China. But China is a big source of anxiety, not just for the UK, but also other countries, the US, and also in Europe. So that's part of the geopolitics. Yes. After all, it's the second largest economy in the world. And it is ahead in many areas.
Just like they all need the big Chinese markets also.
Oh, of course. Over 1 billion people. Thank you very much, Emmanuel.